All I know is that the girl he dated before I came along was stabbed 14 times in the United States. The police there have special departments that deal with unsolved cases. In this country, there are over 100,000 such cases, and only 1% of them are solved. This happened 41 years ago, so I feel scared every time someone shows up at my door. Given the size of the U.S. population, many people consider this to be just a normal thing, as if it happens all the time. It's unfortunate, but have you ever thought about how many lives are ruined behind those dry numbers? How many people live in the hope that one day they will get answers to their questions and know the truth about what happened to their loved ones? I am going to tell you a story about the tragic life of a young mother and her little daughter, a story of desperate searching and fighting against injustice. One summer evening, just after sunset, 4-year-old Heidi Jones was getting ready for bed when her mother, Loretta, opened the bedroom door. Her mother came in and gently told her daughter not to go out. She obeyed and soon fell asleep. The next morning, little Heidi remembered her mother's warning and decided to look through the keyhole before going out to the living room. When she opened the door, she saw something lying on the floor. The memories after that seemed to be blurred. As an adult, Heidi recalled that she suddenly found herself standing on the porch and saw her neighbor. The man was digging for worms, and when he saw her, he said in a friendly manner, "Come in. I have something to show you." The girl replied, "I can't. I think my mother is dead." When the police arrived on the scene, the officers found Loretta lying on the floor, naked, lifeless, and with blood everywhere, on the sofa, on the walls, everywhere. Medical experts confirmed that she had been stabbed twice in the chest and 17 times in the back, and there were also signs that the perpetrator had tried to slit her throat. After a more thorough examination, they confirmed that there had been sexual penetration, but no signs of resistance were found. The victim had no characteristic bruises or scratches, and the furniture in the house was intact, with no signs of broken windows or doors. But the only clue the police had was Heidi's words, "Tom did it. Tom hit my mom." From there, a name emerged, Tom. No last name, no picture or description of the person. Just the name Tom was the only thing Heidi, a 4-year-old, could remember about the person who took her mother's life. However, with just the name Tom, the police had very few clues. The name indicated that Tom could be someone Loretta saw and interacted with the family regularly. After all, a 4-year-old would not remember the name of someone who was not close or frequent in the family. So while Loretta's friends and relatives tried to remember if they knew anyone named Tom, the detectives received a new clue. The incident occurred that same night, just 3 blocks from Loretta's home and just before Loretta was murdered. That evening, Lori Kulo, 10, was riding her bike around the block. Her brother was playing soccer with a friend. When Lori returned to the corner, she noticed that the 2 boys had gone inside. It was getting dark, and Lori decided to follow them. However, as Lori was approaching her house, a man appeared on the street blocking her path. He grabbed Lori, pinned her against the wall, and held her arms behind her back. The man also blocked Lori's legs by placing his foot on them and used his other hand to cover her mouth. Lori tried to scream for help, but she was so scared that she couldn't make a sound. Fortunately, the moment he loosened his grip on her mouth, Lori took the opportunity to scream loudly. Hearing the scream, Lori's brother and his friend ran outside, scaring the attacker into running south in the direction of Loretta's house. Police quickly connected Lori's case to the murder of Loretta Jones, believing that the 2 cases were related and that the killer could be the same person. Police searched and questioned everyone who lived near Loretta's home or frequented the area. Soon they found a man hitchhiking from Price to Provo. He was carrying a folding knife with what appeared to be blood on it. Police arrested the man and took him to Price. However, when Lori Kulo was brought to the police station with her mother to identify him, she immediately said, "That's not him." Furthermore, the knife the man was carrying had nothing to do with Loretta's wound. Upon further investigation, the man proved that he was not in the area at the time of the crime. He was then released. The police investigation was at a standstill until a call on August 1st brought some hope. The caller advised the police to investigate a local man who worked for the railroad named Tom Egley. Loretta's sister recalled that Loretta had a blind date with Tom Egley, but Loretta did not like him and had no plans to go further with Tom. However, considering Heidi's words, perhaps Tom Egley should be checked out. Tom Egley was living in a motel in Helper, Utah with his pregnant girlfriend who was due in a month. The police arrested Tom and took him to the police station for questioning. Tom, of course, denied any wrongdoing and told his story about where he had been that night. According to Tom, he'd been given a ride by two teenagers who dropped him off at a diner in Price. There, Tom bought a burger, sat down on the sidewalk and ate it. After that, he just wandered around town and did not approach Lori Kulo or Loretta Jones's house. The owner of a bar called Highway Rendezvous confirmed that Tom Egley had visited the bar between 11 and 11:30 on the night of July 30th. However, the owner also noted that Tom seemed very nervous and scared, and that his shirt had red stains. When questioned, Tom said that the red paint was from his work as a painter. The police went to Tom's residence to search it, and Tom showed them the jeans and shirt he had been wearing that night. These items of clothing were seized for testing, along with samples of Tom's hair, blood, and fingerprints. All of the evidence was sent to the FBI crime lab in Washington, D.C. Testing from the FBI lab revealed that fibers found on Tom's clothing matched those from the carpet in Loretta Jones's home. This led to Tom Egley's arrest. Detectives believed that Tom had been in Lori Kulo's area with the intention of kidnapping the child, and after seeing Loretta's home, he went inside. Lori Kulo and her brother were taken to the police station to identify Tom Egley, and the boy confirmed that he was the person who attacked Lori. However, Lori was not sure and was not willing to say that it was Tom. During the preliminary hearing of the case, several new witnesses came forward, confirming that Tom Egley had been in town on the day of the incident. They had seen him at the bar, as they had known. However, the fiber evidence quickly fell apart because Tom had been to Loretta Jones's house before, meaning that fibers from the carpet or other materials could have gotten on his clothes during those previous visits. So Tom Egley was let go. He was simply seen as someone who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. The police had to start the investigation from scratch, but their only hope was little Heidi's vague memories, and the child had nothing more to offer. A year after Loretta's death, the case became as cold as the winter winds in Utah. 4 years later, Heidi's life took another hit when her grandfather passed away. Mr. Jones never got over the loss of his daughter. Still, Heidi's family tried to move on. Heidi grew up, started school, and everyday life, along with new friends, made it seem like those dark days had never happened. But they had, and the wound still ached in Heidi's heart. Whenever Heidi tried to talk to her about her mother, Mrs. Jones would just cry. By then, she had reached a point where all she wanted was for Loretta to rest in peace. But Heidi didn't want her mother's case to be forgotten. In 1989, Heidi began a letter-writing campaign, sending letters to various agencies, from the police chief to the Carbon County Sheriff's Office to the FBI. But the more she tried, the more walls seemed to appear in her way. At some point, Heidi filed all her notes and letters away in a file, hoping to return to them at a future opportunity. And indeed, Heidi returned to her efforts several times. If you recall, that night, Heidi slept very quietly, and the next morning she insisted that her mother did not scream, did not call for help, and did not cry. Loretta endured all the pain in silence until her last breath, so that Heidi would not have to step out of the room and hear her mother's screams. So when relatives advised her to let go, Heidi simply replied, "I can't." Gradually, Heidi returned to Utah, but all her efforts to find out the truth about her mother's death failed one after another. All her conversations with the authorities led to one conclusion: we've done everything we can. There are no more clues. Unexpectedly, Heidi received help from an unpleasant incident. On the weekend of July 4th earlier that year, Heidi's car was stolen. In frustration, she posted the information on Facebook, and received a reply from a former school friend named David Brewer. Oh, what a shame. I wish I was closer to help. Heidi and David Brewer had known each other since high school. He was a year older than Heidi, and during a conversation about the stolen car, Heidi discovered that David now worked for the Carbon County Sheriff's Office in Price, Utah. Heidi immediately recalled that her mother's case had been handled by the Carbon County Sheriff's Office many years ago. She called David and told him the story of her mother. David agreed to help, and after meeting in person, he began searching the archives for the case file. However, to her surprise, there were no records of the case or any boxes of evidence left. Nothing. As David Brewer searched through the medical examiner's office, he finally discovered a file from the original case. The file contained a detailed report from a forensic medical examiner, which mentioned that they had performed a vaginal swab test and found sperm. By modern DNA testing standards, Brewer found that if they had this sample, it would have taken about 10 minutes to identify the perpetrator. However, the evidence was lost, and there was nothing strange or supernatural about it, just negligence and indifference on the part of law enforcement. David Brewer placed an article in the local paper in the hope that the public could help him piece together the details of the case. Soon after, he received a call from a woman who claimed to have information about the case. She asked, "Did you know that Loretta wrote her killer's name in blood?" At first, Brewer thought someone was playing a prank on him, since how could a normal woman know these details when she had no access to the crime scene? But the woman replied, "I was there." It turned out that the girl lived with Heidi's grandmother, and the day after Loretta's body was found, Heidi's grandfather, Mr. Jones, had asked her and of his daughters to go to Loretta's clothes to pick up clothes and some things for Heidi. She claimed that she had seen the letters written in blood with her own eyes, the letters T and O. Loretta tried to identify her killer, but did not have time to write down the complete name. Brewer and his colleagues immediately searched the archives for a photo of the crime scene and eventually found it. When they opened the envelope, the detectives discovered that the story was true. The T and O were clearly visible, leaving no doubt that these were not random bloodstains. Brewer began contacting all the surviving witnesses who had testified at Tom Eagley's trial in the 1970s. And one of the witnesses was Eagley's ex-girlfriend, Marcia Hidalgo. When Brewer spoke to her, he got a surprising confession. Marcia said, "All I know is that the girl he was dating before I showed up was stabbed 14 times. When Brewer asked Marcia about that night, she replied, "I was pregnant. I waited for him to come home, but he didn't come home until about 3 a.m. That worried me. I asked, 'Where have you been?' And he just said, 'I'm here now.' Then he went into the bathroom with his clothes on and took a shower." Marcia continued, "He took a shower with his clothes on, then eventually took them off and put them in a bag. The next day he took the bag to a laundromat where there was an incinerator and he threw the bag in there. When Brewer asked Marcia if she saw me to police at the time, she confirmed that she had. Brewer realized that she was lying. The fact that she was pregnant at the time was not a matter for the investigation, but only a matter for her conscience. It was 11:35 a.m., and Brewer was headed to Thomas Edward Eagley's residence to interview him. They found Eagley in a small town called Rocky Ford, Colorado. When the detectives approached him, Brewer asked, "Can you spare us a moment so we can talk about what happened in Carbon County all those years ago?" Eagley replied, "Carbon County? Well, if you have any clue why you're here, it's because one of my ex-girlfriends died years ago. They arrested me for that, but then let me go." Tom began to tell his old story. "I stopped near that area or somewhere near there and got a burger. I remember sitting down on the sidewalk and eating it. There was nothing else to do, so I went back. Marcia was in the motel, she was pregnant, and she knew I was out." Brewer continued to press Tom with questions. "Do you think that man deserves to be in jail?" Tom replied, "It depends on whether he did it or not. If he did it, he should be forgiven, because it was only one time." Brewer and his team didn't get much out of the interview, but it seemed like Eagley was trying to admit something. Before the detectives left Tom Egley's house, they asked him one last question. If you could say anything to Loretta's daughter right now, what would you say? A few minutes later, Brewer called Heidi to give her the answer she had been waiting for all these years. Tom texted, "I'm sorry he took your mother's life." Detective David Brewer kept his promise. Tom Egley was arrested by local police shortly after the team returned to Utah. But why he did it remains a mystery. Tom agreed to plead guilty to the murder of Loretta Jones on the condition that he would not be forced to confess to rape. Thomas Edward Egley was sentenced to 10 life sentences for the murder of Loretta Jones, which was the maximum sentence he could receive in 1970. At his trial, after the verdict was announced, Egley made a short statement, "I am sorry I did it, and I am amazed that you are still investigating this case after 46 years. So that's it. Take care of yourself and your loved ones. Be kind and remember that no one gets away with crime unpunished."